Season 12 already, JB. It's unbelievable to me that it has been 11 years basically going to season 12 now.
Yeah.
When Eric Wren and I started this in 2008, going way back, the audio podcast.
September 24th. Yeah.
You came on not long after that with us.
I think I called you guys on the very first show, and you're like, "Who is this guy?"
James Baker.
Yeah, who's calling us from LA? Like, what? Yeah, it's been a long
Line
time.
one, James Baker. Go ahead. No, I do miss the live notion of the show, but at the same time, it does not or did not allow us to do some of the nifty things we do these days on this version of the show. In the Huddle has gone strong. For those of you that are new to us, we are a weekly podcast show, although we'll drop multiple episodes each week so that we don't bore you for 3 hours each week. This is going to be about a 90-minute show. Cross our fingers here. And we got some interviews coming up throughout that if you've gone through Facebook or the other means, we'll list out exactly what's going on here. We don't want to waste much time on the show. Mickey Rehring from SUNY-Maritime will be joining us. Also, help me out here because I'm going to forget somebody if I'm not careful with our other interviews.
There's Jason Hellwig, senior quarterback from Brockport. Yep. And then I also believe there was a James Gillespie,
yes.
Right?
You got it from Widener.
From Widener. So we got a little mix of conferences from, we got all the way in the Bronx, we got upstate, we got a little PA, so it should be fun.
New England, we won't forget about you, don't you worry. We got plenty to talk about New England. And so we're going to start in New England here. Obviously, Mickey Rehring is de facto a New Englander based on this discussion. The way the ECFC goes, it's a little bit pan-region here in the East.
Yes.
So let's start with the ECFC. We're going to show you last year's win-loss records, talk about the changes in each conference, look at the Week 1 schedule briefly. We'll note some other games or some special games we think later on the show. And then what we're going to drive this run is our projected winners and sleepers and why we picked those teams to be such. That was kind of what you asked for in our Twitter poll, basically tied with games to watch. So we're going to cover about 78% of your desires on this show right here, maybe talk about where I'm going to be on Week 1. So could you get your wife in? We'll get everybody happy if we get Jen in here.
Yeah, I'm surprised she didn't get more votes, man. I guess
she had mine.
That's all right, yeah. Same here.
Well, you got to sleep with her at night. I don't. So.
Right. Indeed.
Just saying. Okay, let's start with the ECFC here. And the top line team is no longer in the ECFC. They were 6-0 to finish the season in conference last year, though 8-3 overall, 7-3 heading into the playoffs. Hassan now joins the CCC. So we have an interesting 6-team league. SUNY-Maritime was the best of breed left in there last season. But Dean is not eligible for the postseason, at least until 2020, probably until 2021. That is just because they're a provisional program.
Yeah, and I thought that they already, came over that hurdle. I thought there was like a 2-year probationary period with the NCAA, but it sounds like it's more of a 3 or 4-year one. Based on what you're hearing from Pat and folks at D3Football.com. For some reason, I thought they would be eligible this season, but at the end of the day, I think one thing you and I definitely agree on is that, until proven otherwise, SUNY-Maritime is probably the team to beat in this conference.
Yeah, you can see the schedule on the screen one more time. And SUNY-Maritime, as you said, projected winner for both of us. We'll talk about that interview in a second. Sleeper Anna Maria, the last place team technically, although tied with Alfred State in the record columns. Coach Maroney in Anna Maria is a dynamic fellow. I am hoping for him. We don't root for teams, but he's one of those guys you want to see succeed there because he just eats, breathes, sleeps D3 football in general. Love the guy. We're going to have him on the show this season, guaranteed. We're going to wait for him to win a game with this team to get him and or a player on. I hope to go up there to see them live at some point this season. So beware, Anna Maria, I may be there. But, he's got the charisma. Can the team deliver is the question. Let's talk about Anna Maria before we dive into SUNY-Maritime.
Yeah, I had the chance to talk to Coach Mulroney as of covering the ECFC for D3Football.com's kickoff publication. Really interesting guy. I mean, he's been recognized by the American Football Coaches Association as one of like the top 35 guys under 35, and he became a head coach at I think only 27 years old. Football at Boston College, and I think it's Stony Brook as well. Just a really hardworking guy, and one thing that you really see, especially on social media, is sort of the brand awareness, kind of the positive. I mean, you're end of the day, they were a 1-9 team last year, and so there's definitely things that they need to work on the football field. But as far as winning the offseason, I mean, just their social media presence, their positive attitude, they really do believe that they're going to get this thing turned around, and it'll be interesting to see if this is the year.
So that's Anna Maria. Let's go back to SUNY-Maritime, who we both project as the winner here for the ECFC. Mickey Rehring comes from Johns Hopkins, former defensive coordinator for Hopkins. And he's somebody that a lot of people thought left because he didn't get the head job. And you're going to learn in this interview that is not the case. And we make that perfectly clear after he said it once. We made sure we heard him right because we didn't know ourselves what exactly the situation was. And after losing Jim Margraf last year, or between seasons, I should say, was actually this year, this calendar
January,
year.
right?
Yeah, in very early January, things turned upside down for everybody connected with that program at Johns Hopkins. He lands at SUNY-Maritime. Coach DiCatano was surprised. We talked about that in the interview, but was very humble about the situation afterward. He's doing fine. We talk to him frequently, see him on Twitter and whatnot. So Coach DiCatano still very much alive and well in the football ranks, and happy to see that he's a great guy. Yeah, Fordham Rams is up there or down there. I'm actually upstate this week, believe it or not. But Coach Rehring is somebody that is going to do a great job, we think, at SUNY-Maritime. You'll see why in this interview right now. JB, we have a guest here that was not in our region officially last season, obviously, but Coach Rehring is joining us now from SUNY-Maritime. And Coach, welcome to In the Huddle officially. You are part of our In the Huddle family now.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate having me, and appreciate all you do for D3 football.
Thank you, sir. But you know what? I did get to see your team last season, both teams technically. Maritime early in the season when they faced Husson in a tough game there. And then I saw your Johns Hopkins team when they faced RPI down in Baltimore. Let's kind of go over kind of the past here first. This has been a pretty brutal offseason news-wise for anybody affiliated with Hopkins, etc. We talked to David Tamero about it a little bit. Let's hear it from you. How did you find out that Coach Margraf had passed? What was your reaction? And what led you ultimately to decide to leave Hopkins at that point, or not right at that point, but a little bit later on to get to Maritime?
Yeah, I mean, one, I was in complete shock. And it was something where Coach would always joke with me and Greg that we ruined more football games for him than anybody, because he hated commercials. So he always watched games, with his TiVo or whatever it may be, recorded. And me and Greg would be texting with him back and forth, and a big play would happen or something. We'd react, and he would come back, "Hey, stop it, guys! You're ruining the game for me," because he wasn't quite there. So we were watching the Rose Bowl the night before, and the three of us were on a text chain, and then I get a call from Greg, he was in Chicago at the time, and got a call and told me the news. And right away, the athletic director and our sports information director, Ernie LaRossa, came down, and there really wasn't any words that needed to be spoken. It was something that was I felt like I lost a part of my family, because that's how I viewed Coach Margraf. It really was shock. It took a few days to set in, and quite honestly, there are certain days where it really hasn't set in. There's things now that I'm dealing with as a head coach that I'd love to pick up the phone and ask Coach's opinion on it, and unfortunately can't do that. So that was the biggest thing. But quite honestly, and the unique thing about here, probably the last in-person conversation I had with Coach Margraf was about the SUNY-Maritime job. And he talked to me about it and how much success Maritime has had in the past, and what they could potentially do moving forward. And he was fired up because he's a Long Island guy, so he started talking about pizza shops and everything that's great in New York. So that was really one of the last conversations I had with him. So then moving forward, obviously we stuck together as a program at Hopkins and tried to just be there for each other. And obviously Greg's going to do a great job. He's a dear friend of mine, and we probably became closer through the whole month of January and into February and even today, just through that tragedy that we had to deal with together.
For those that might have missed this part of it, though, I want to make it clear that you were considering other jobs, maritime job, et cetera, before Coach Margraf passed away. This was not a decision based on, I didn't get the Johns Hopkins job, so I'm going elsewhere at that point.
Correct. And it was something, like I said, it's, as we went through the process, me and Greg got close with it, and we understood that, I was there for him and he was there for me. And we found out the same day. He found out he got the Johns Hopkins job, and I found out here at Maritime. And Greg approached Coach Margraf's wife to let her know that he had gotten the job and would be named the head coach. And her first question, or one of her first questions, was, "What about Mickey?" And Greg told her, and she started crying. She said Jim would have been so proud. His guys are doing what they want to do. And that was a big thing for me. And she was, called me as soon as she got off the phone with Greg and congratulated me. And it's the Hopkins family, because Jim is a big family, and it's something that we are a tight knit group, and I always feel part of that institution, whether I'm here or whether I was still there.
Well, Coach, back when you and I spoke in July, I think you were on a family vacation out in Wyoming, and I was at the beach with my wife and all our kids. And one of the things that you told me about your conversation with Coach Margraf when you were considering the opportunity to go up there to the Frog's Neck was, if they won in the past, they can win there again, I think was what he told you. And so you were coming into a good situation. SUNY has been knocking on the door for the ECFC title. I had won it a couple of years back. So you tell us a little bit about this roster of players that you've inherited, plus this your first, I guess, recruiting class, even though it was probably truncated given the timing.
Exactly. I found out on my interview, I actually got a chance to meet some of the players and realized they had gone through a lot. Obviously, with Coach Holmes leaving late in the season, or late in the year, right before the season, last season, and then bringing in Coach DiGaetano, and then present the interviews and me. So within 6 months, I was their third head coach. But you could tell that they wanted to take that next step, and that they wanted to work hard. They were there. They saw it. It was just out of their grasp for one reason or another. And it's something I've had experience coaching in the playoffs and competing for conference championships. And that's the thing that I want to do here is each and every year is put the best football team we can every week and compete in a conference that's from top to bottom, very competitive within ourselves. And but something that I think if we do what we can do with the talent that we have currently, that's to at the end of the year be in a position to compete for that championship and get that automatic bid that the ECFC has. And that's any job coach I would talk to Coach about, or really any of the coaches that coach under Coach Margraf. That was the thing. What do they have? What have they done? The thing about here is we've won in the near past, and last year and the year before, and we've been to playoff games here at Maritime. It's not like it's a complete rebuilding process. Our roster is a little bit different than the years past at Maritime. Our numbers are a little bit down than what they're used to. I did come in late in the beginning of March, so the recruiting class was small when I got here, and I think the staff did a great job of coming together and bringing in 25 talented players. And then next year it'll be a full recruiting cycle. By the time we got there, there wasn't many new recruits that we could go after. It was basically whoever had applied, and that's who we did. But I think we're able to get some great players that will compete early for us, and it's shown in the preseason.
One thing that folks know, Coach DiGaetano was a good fan of the program, and got to talk with him a little bit as things were changing at the beginning of the year or earlier in the year. And he was disappointed, obviously, but he was also very supportive, it seemed like, of you and the program, and what he and Coach Holmes had built prior, over the many years now that they had their involvement. Did they leave things in good shape overall? Obviously, you want to improve it. There's no doubt about that. But this is one of those situations that seems like it wasn't really broken per se, but a change was desired. Kind of give us an overview of how things were left and, what you think you can add to this equation overall to make things so much better, or not even necessarily so much better. You can't get many more wins than they had necessarily, but just better generally for this ECAFC chase, and then overall the NCAA possibilities that come with it.
Yeah. Full disclosure, Coach Holmes and Coach DiGaetano were two of the first people to call me and congratulate me when the news broke that I got the job. And that's a testament of their character. And I don't take that lightly. It was something that I was I had heard that Coach DiGaetano was a little bit disappointed. I've met him since then, working some Fordham camps and things just through passing. And, we're able to throw some ideas off. And again, it just speaks to who he is as a person, who he is as a coach, that it's not about he wants what's best for this place, because it was a special place for him. And, other people decided who the new head coach would be. So I was not shocked, because I had known both of those coaches through other coaches, and they have both been spoken very highly of, and now have started a relationship with both of them. And they definitely didn't leave the cabinet bare by any means. We got plenty of talent that they had recruited themselves or were part of the recruitment process while they were here. This is a very unique place with some military aspects to it, and just location and things like that. So they helped me kind of learn of kind of how do things go here. It's way different than the other institutions that I've been at. So they've been a huge asset to me and a great resource to have. And the thing, there just was a lot of transition. So I went through a coaching change whenever I was in college, and we had some guys that decided to move on. I'm sure that was the case, and obviously 2 transition periods in 6 months probably caused some players to move away from the program. But our main focus now are the 80 or so guys that we have on our current roster, and to get them better every single day. And again, look forward to getting on the field and showcasing what we have on September 7th.
Yeah, you're being quickly indoctrinated into you get the Maritime Marathon with Maine Maritime and Mass Maritime, and then SUNY, and then the United States Merchant Marine. It's like back to back to back. So it's going to be an interesting gauntlet to run there. But talking back to those 80-some guys, when we spoke back in July, you had mentioned the competition between, I think it was Jacqueline, Chris Snuffer, and Rob Wheeler for the opening at quarterback. Unfortunately for you, Thomas Wright graduated. He was a great quarterback for the Privateers, and I'm sure you would have liked him to have an extra year of eligibility. But tell us a little bit, since as we're recording this, we're about a week away from games kicking off. We're about 9 days away from next Saturday. So, preseason's already underway. I'm sure you've gotten a good look at these QBs that are going to run your offense. What are you thinking?
I think each of them have a different skill set that makes them unique to themselves and bring something to the table offensively. Not just the transition from head coaching, but we've gone through a lot of transition assistant coaching wise. So this is the third offense that these guys will be learning in a calendar year, which is hard to do, especially at that position. So I think the biggest thing is for us is to utilize the strengths of who we have offensively. Each of them, one day, one will have a better day than the other two, then another guy will have a better day. So we still have a few days to figure it out. we also do have a freshman that came in from Long Island, Michael Varela, who's also doing a great job. So between the four of them, it's a good competition to have. And whatever I decide and Adam Moses, our offensive coordinator, decides, who can lead our offense the best and who can move the football down the field the best will be the one that'll take it. And quite honestly, it might change a little bit of what we do offensively, play calling wise, but won't change our mentality that we want to attack down the field as much as we can while establishing a run game and protecting the football and the same things. And whichever one of those four can do that the best will be the one that gets the starting nod on the 7th.
Well, on the flip side, you have Liam Bailey at linebacker. I think he was elected one of your captains, potential defensive player of the year candidate for the conference. I mean, he's been starter multiple seasons now for the Privateers. You're a defensive guy. I mean, we talked a little bit about this, maybe some of the changes of the schemes. I mean, offense has changed a lot, as you mentioned, given the transition. How is the defense, picking up on what you want to bring to the table there in Throgs Neck?
A strength of our team is the number of guys we have back on defense. We lose some guys up front, some great players, Peyton Campbell and things. They did a great job, and that's what we'll have to replace. With the back end, we'll have a lot of those guys back. And I kind of go back to my first year at Hopkins. We had a great middle linebacker in the name Taylor Matchow. He was a captain for us. He was everything. And I remember my first day in the job, Coach Margraf. I was coaching linebackers, and Coach Margraf's best advice to me was, "Don't mess up Taylor." That was it. Just don't screw it up. He'll make plays, and that's a little bit that you got to do with Liam. Liam is one of the best linebackers I've seen at this level. I really have, and with the experience that I've had, coaching in Division III, going to the playoffs, seeing other teams, seeing teams outside of the Centennial, he's up there with some of the best ones. He just has a knack for the game. And again, you talk to any Hopkins guys that have been in that coaching tree. When your best players, your hardest workers, you have a great foundation for success. And we have to kick him out of the weight room a lot of the time. He's constantly working. He's constantly getting better.
Yeah, we got to do that with Frank too. I mean, he's just always in there. Give him,
right.
This guy.
But no, I mean, we have two captains on defense that I think are really helping bring our young players around. And obviously Liam, who will be a two-time captain. And then Justin Snuffer, who's our starting safety.
What a great name for a football player. Right? Snuffing the run.
Yeah. So, and he's done really, really well. And like I said, we've gone through 3 offenses, so this is our 3rd defense in a calendar year. So we have our work cut out for us for sure, but it's our main focus right now is just getting better. We can't win a football game today, but if we don't get better at the little things, that'll add up and lose us a football game down the road. So we're just focusing on ourselves and getting better each day and understanding what the schemes we want to do in all 3 phases. And this Saturday we'll scrimmage a little bit and try to knock the rust off, and then start on Labor Day for our main Maritime prep.
So I'm wondering here, the Jim Catanzaros of the world, who is the committee chair again this year, if the Maritime squad were able to win the ECFC and if Hopkins gets back to the playoffs too, there is a remote possibility that you could be sent to face your old team. Have you thought about that? And is it possible that we could see this actually as a schedule feature? Have you and Greg maybe talked about maybe adding this as a non-conference game, Maritime versus Johns Hopkins at some point?
I'll leave it up to him, and Centennial only has one non-conference game, so I'll leave that question to Greg that he can deal with that. But quite honestly, and again, this is how I felt. We've been close here, but if we don't focus on each game at a time, you're never going to get there, and you can never look back and I wish I would have done this. Wish I would have done this. Our goal every week is to put the best game plan together and to compete at a high level to try to win football games. And if we do get awarded the automatic bid and we do make it to the playoffs, we'll play whoever we have, and we'll play them as hard as we possibly can with the players that we have. And it's something anywhere within that 500-mile radius, there are a lot of teams that we could play. Is Hopkins one of them? Sure. It's that's a good problem to have when you get there. And the thing about it is you don't have that problem until you actually do get there. So our focus is to do what we can over the next few weeks to get into conference play and hopefully be at a point when we play Alfred State at the end of the year to win that game and potentially go on to the playoffs. But if we don't take care of business before that, then we'll not be awarded that opportunity in November.
Well, this could be an interesting season, to say the least, JB. What are you thinking?
I think so. I mean, they, like I said, they've got the gauntlet of the Maritime teams that start off, and you have a 2-week, bye period, which is kind of interesting. I know the ECFC in general, with the departure of Husson, had to scramble a little bit to schedule games. You guys are actually playing Mount St. Joseph's from the HCAC, I think, in the last week of the season, which is one of the more interesting. There's going to be a bunch of interesting out-of-conference matchups this season, including that one. But Mount St. Joseph's. I mean, they're like in like Tennessee or something like that. I don't even know where those guys are.
Cincinnati. Yeah, Cincinnati. Yeah, it's one of those where I didn't schedule it. It was already scheduled before I got here. As a matter of fact, we played Hampton last year in SCS school. At home. So it was just with the conferences kind of all coming together, and like the Centennial. Whenever I played at Franklin and Marshall, we had 4 non-conference games. Now the Centennial only has 1. For the ECFC, our conference is very unique. That Husson leaving, we only have 6. But next year Keystone will add in. So that's why we're playing Mount St. Joe's for 1 year. I actually have family and was born in Cincinnati, so Mount St. Joseph's I have a little familiarity, and I know that they'll be a good test for us. They're good. They've historically been a good football team. Know nothing about them. Yeah, I'll get there when I get there. But it's something where exactly. But I think it's unique in that sense, just with conference realignments and teams going here or there or whatever it may be. Our conference being unique that it's a football only conference. We're not part of multi-sports with that. So, we go all the way. Last year it was to Bangor, Maine, to Washington, D.C. So the geography was a little bit crazy. Now we don't have to go quite up to Bangor, Maine, but, still with Gallaudet in our conference down to D.C. and kind of us in the middle and the rest of the teams in, Massachusetts and Vermont. So it's a good challenge for me because I have very little familiarity with any of these teams, in my time through the playoffs and out of conference games and things like that. So, but that's why you coach. You coach to be challenged and continue to be challenged. And, I'm looking forward to it. And so is the staff and the players and everybody involved in our program.
Well, with all due respect to President Trump, not all parts of Baltimore are cruddy areas, let's say. Johns Hopkins is a beautiful place, but you move from one beautiful place to another beautiful place. The shore view from the football field, as I saw personally last year, is beautiful. It will induce me to come back this season to cover you guys at some point. We'll figure out which game that will be. But, Coach, we want to wish you the best of luck. And, again, welcome to the In the Huddle official family. While we've branched out, we still are the East Region show, per se. So welcome, good luck, and this is going to be an interesting run in the ECFC. So I have a feeling we're going to have maybe a player or two from your school on throughout the season, and hope that we can make that happen at some point.
Absolutely, anytime. Thanks for having me, guys.
What are your takeaways from that interview, JB? Coach Rehring, for me personally, just seems to exude a certain charisma. He's got the credentials, obviously, for the time he's put in at Johns Hopkins and learning from Jim Margraf, obviously, along the way. But what are your takeaways?
Well, yeah, I think he's put himself in a good position because he's got a team that's bringing back a number of talented players, and so it's not like he's going into a situation that's a total rebuild. So he can leverage some of the success that he with the Hopkins program, and it's a different type of setup there, privateers than it has been some of the other Division III schools that he's coached at. But I'm sure that his brand of coaching probably still very disciplinary, maybe even military-esque in a way. As a defensive guy, he'll fit right in to the privateers crew up there.
Yeah, SUNY-Maritime is a military type school, state-based military school. Great setting there. Hope to get out there as well this season, as it is close to my New York City home. They're in the Bronx. I'm in Manhattan, but it's not that far away. A quick little drive up to there, and a beautiful vista to overlook during the games itself.
Yep.
First time I got there was last year, believe it or not. So there you go. Let's go to the CCC, where Husson lands now. They're not in obviously the standings that we're going to see here. Western New England is the reigning king of the hill, with Salve Regina right behind them. Endicott, though, look at the 5-1s across the board there in those top three.
I know, yeah. It's a pretty close call. It was one of those things where it really came down to a tiebreaker that helped, and really it was Salve who knocked off, I think, Endicott in the last week of the regular season that basically helped the Golden Bears get that championship and playoff berth. So with Husson joining the mix, Frank, we could see another one-loss conference type of situation or a tiebreaker situation again, because it's just going to be that much more competitive in the CCC this season.
Well, interestingly enough, neither of us picked Husson in our projected winner or sleeper. Now, why don't we explain ourselves in that respect here? Is it an up-in-class situation for you, like it was for me, that when they had to play all the teams in the CCC, this is going to be a bigger challenge for Husson to acclimate to? Is it because Gabby Price is no longer there? Is it because they have to switch quarterback because of graduation of Corey Brandon? What is it?
I think for me, it's the departure of Brandon, because he has been such an integral part of that program's success these last 3 or 4 seasons. And so, you don't necessarily just replace a guy like that. I mean, I know they have a solid core of returning players, but they are ratcheting it up a notch as far as competition goes in playing this schedule and the teams in this conference compared to the ones that they used to face in the ECFC. So there might be a little bit of an adjustment period. I picked Western New England to win the conference, mostly just based on the combination of, I think, Alec Coleman plus a certain bringing back defensively that really helped them out down the stretch. And they, I give them credit. I mean, they did lose in the playoffs, but they gave Frostburg State a pretty good game. I think a much better game than some people may have thought they would. So I think for now they're on top of the hill, but I do like Salve and what Coach Gil Martin has going on with the Seahawks. I think they could play. They could be sort of a dark horse or a spoiler, you could so to speak. Even though they did finish, 7-4 isn't necessarily dark horse type material, but I like them, and I also actually like Nichols too. I think they could be in the mix a little bit though.
I picked Endicott, and my sleeper is Curry. Our notes are wrong, but the screen is correct right now. Curry is my sleeper pick here. And Endicott, just to me, has been one of those teams that has been just gaining steam. A coach near and dear to you, who will remain nameless for a moment here, began to build there, is continued with Coach McGonigal. Kevin DeWallace, the coach, in case those are wondering. I shouldn't play that game. You're wearing orange, I'm wearing blue, no. So we've got Hobart's colors on tonight. We're
kind of. Well, this is red. This is actually Buccaneer red, but it's close.
Boy, that's orangey on my side. I hate to tell you. But Coach McGonigal is doing some great things with the foundation that was built there by Coach DeWall. I think he would admit that. Hopefully we have him on the show at some point. We'd love to have him on to discuss the changes he's made, the things he kept, because there's a little of both when a new coach comes in. There has to be, because you have players carrying over, for goodness sake. So, nonetheless, I think that they were almost over the hump last year, and I think they built from there and give Western New England a real challenge, and Salve Regina for that matter. But Curry is that team that for how many years was the king of the hill in New England football. And I just feel like this is going to be their year to come back. Who's it, Coach Bandini over there? He knows what it takes to win. I think Curry's going to get behind that football team on a more administrative end of things this year. So I think that the athletics department is probably going to start investing in this thing a little bit more than they have been, because they see what's happening around them in this conference and in that region or sub-region of New England. That's why I have a little bit of confidence right now in Curry coming alive as a sleeper. Doesn't mean they'll win, but it means that they'll probably surprise some teams along the way this season. So that's my pick for a sleeper, as you can see. I think the other thing I want to point out here, 4 of the 7 teams play on Friday night. Husson doesn't start
big time.
Husson doesn't start until week 2, I believe. And so you have 4 of the 7 teams from last year playing on Friday night. So they are the highlight of the Friday night conferences this year, at least in week 1.
Yeah.
Let's go to NUMAC, where there is one Friday night game. That's Worcester State at WPI. We have a little bit of disagreement on this one as well, but let's talk about what happened last year, which was MIT was the king of the hill. Merchant Marine was surprising a lot of people with that 8-2 overall record. Congratulations, Coach Tupe and company, for that. Springfield, a herky-jerky season. Obviously, injuries played a big role in a lot of that. Chad Shade and company last year. Nick Boehner makes, first team preseason All-America on D3Football.com as center.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, JV, let's get a photo op with it. Okay. Nonetheless, and then Coast Guard was right there too. I mean, so this was a very competitive conference last year. And so you picked Springfield, I picked WPI. Let me make my case first, because I've been making you go first all the time here. I just think that they have enough coming back to really take the next step this season. And I understand what I think is going to really happen is that MIT, Merchant Marine, Springfield, and Coast Guard, there's going to be enough carnage going on at the top of this conference that WPI may lose 1 or 2 games in conference and still be able to sneak in to win the thing ultimately. They play hard-nosed football every week. I just like the way things are lining up for them this season. But there are 5 teams, honestly, that could win this conference right now. What's your thought on why
maybe even 6, because all the coaches I talked to and in the NUMAC all were heaping tons of praise onto the quarterback wide receiver tandem at Norwich. So I think even the cadets are throwing their hats in the ring. I did talk to Coach C. Rob of WPI. This is the biggest senior class that they've ever had in their program's history. Fields and their other running back is back after. So they lost basically like 1,300 rush reduction last year when those guys went down. Sean McAllen. Sorry, McAllen and Fields. There we go. Get it right, Baker. 2,000 yard rushing right there was on the off the sideline. So if those guys are back and healthy, plus the large senior class, I think WPI is certainly in prime condition to make a run. They just have to get through the first month of their season, because they've got a really tough schedule. They're playing. I think they're playing RPI. They've got the other game, I think, in week 4 that's against a pretty high ranked team. That's escaping me at the moment, but if they can get through, get to week 4 either 3-1 or even 2-2, they'll be in good shape going into conference play.
And the sleepers, I mean, we have 4 different teams across the board here. Out of the 6 we were just talking about, we picked 4 of them as projected winners of sleepers here. You say Coast Guard, I say MIT. I think MIT, obviously, calling them a sleeper is a little bit of a joke, I guess, in their heads, because
the
we just won the darn
champions
thing.
Are a sleeper, yeah.
But I think the expectations for them are lower this year for some reason, and so I actually don't buy into that fully. I think they're going to be right at the top with WPI in my estimation, so that's why I call them a sleeper. It's no disrespect to MIT for that fact. It's just I just don't see people naming them as the team this year as much as we thought last year, for instance. And Bubna probably loves that role. He probably hates the fact that I'm calling him out as probably a sleeper pick at this point. He wants to sneak up on them and beat them. But Coast Guard, go ahead and make your spiel. Yeah, give me a spiel on Coast Guard.
Well, I mean, they last season when I spoke with Coach Jor, the preseason, he was telling me about this group of rising sophomores that all attended this Navy academy, and so these guys are just I think a different level now. All those guys are juniors. We saw with their quarterback that we had on the show. I think it was Ryan Murphy last season. He was really Ryan Jones, he gutted out some real tough games for them, and they're just going to be a really challenging out for pretty much anyone that they play. I mean, they kind of jump off with University of New England in the CCC, so they kind of ease into the season, unlike WPI, who has to go play RPI, Husson, and Springfield in weeks 2 through 4, which is going to be a challenge. But I think Coast Guard actually could be a potential top pick. So we'll see what happens.
Drink from the mug, Ryan Murphy doesn't ring as well as drink from the mug, Ryan Jones. Okay,
Yeah.
Just thinking. Yeah,
Messing up Liam Murphy, who's or Liam Bailey. There's too many Murphys, Baileys. Okay, maybe I should. Never mind. Joke.
I'd rather drink some Baileys at this time of night on a Sunday, but that's a whole nother story. Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah.
It's the internet. I can say anything. Okay, MASCAC.
Exactly.
Here is a conference that when I sat down to pick this one, I was like, who in the hell am I picking for this one? Because this is not an easy conference to pick. A lot of losses to graduation, a lot of interesting teams that showed up at the end of the season, especially last year, to make some noise. And so you look at it from the 30,000-foot view, and you say, this is a conference that could go anywhere. Look, Framingham State's been the cream of the crop for a couple of years, although Plymouth State had kind of nudged them a couple of years ago. We know that's the whole story. Western Connecticut had
done it 2 years in a row.
Yeah, Western Connecticut, it started out great, had issues at the end of the season, but we highlighted here. We're not going to get into that right now. They lose some to graduation, though, as well. So I'm going to pick WestCon. You can see here after their second place finish last year. I think that adversity tends to bring teams together. I think what happened at the end of last year may actually give them a little bit of a disrespect feeling, enough to come out with a chip on their shoulder to win enough games to win this conference this year. But I wouldn't be shocked if, although this is where your hedging has started here, I've noticed, Framingham State and Bridgewater State you've picked. You can talk about that in a second, but I wouldn't be surprised if Framingham State was up there winning it again, even if it was based on an attrition scenario where everybody beats each other up so that they were the last man standing at the top at the end of the season. Okay, why are you hedging?
Well, because I think a couple times when I'm going through this process of talking to all these coaches, and I think tiebreakers are just a fact of life. Going to be at least a couple of different conferences this year that will come down to having co-champions, where the Pool A or automatic qualifier playoff bid is going to be chosen off of some tiebreaker scenario. So Bridgewater and Framingham were sort of like my picks. And the thing that's interesting is that for the first time in a while, Framingham Bridgewater game isn't happening at the top of the schedule. It's happening actually in week 10. And so I think that's sort of a de facto conference championship type of game. Bridgewater did win the MASCAC back in 2006. And so there's a chance there that we could see them back in the driver's seat, because they are bringing back a pretty loaded team, and they kind of flew under the radar last season, I think, a little bit, but I don't think they're going to be this year.
Westfield State was a 500 team last season. You're picking them as a sleeper. I'm picking a team that was above 500, but not by much, in Plymouth State last year. Plymouth State has had the history. That's why I kind of feel like that they will still stick around in this whole race. Why Westfield State? That would surprise some folks.
Well, partially because they beat WestCon in week 11 last season. They knocked them off, and they moved their record up to 500. They're going to be taking on a certain college from Schenectady early on in the season, and if the Owls beat Union, then you'll see what I have this team might catch some people by surprise. We'll see. I mean, usually my predictions are wrong, but hey, that's why we get to do this stuff. It's fun.
Let's go to the Liberty League up next here, and we have some backdrop story to talk about, obviously connected with this, and I'll give a little commentary on it as well here. Let's get rid of the commentary now and let the season play out, is my view. And Pat Coleman, I think, gave some commentary on it without naming names and pointing fingers, but it was clear in the Around the Nation podcast what he was talking about the 1 year of eligibility transfer scenario, et cetera. and how that defeats the purest notion of Division III. I'm going to go a little bit deeper than that, but not necessarily with a little bit more explanation, a little bit more specificity. Let's say that. First, let's look at this conference. Okay. RPI last year wins it at a 4-1 tie with Ithaca. When you think about it, Ithaca was a kick / 2-point conversion attempt away from winning the conference at the end of the day. They could have been the team that was facing Johns Hopkins ultimately. Wahid Nabi, that is their quarterback, was injured for that game. So it's a backup quarterback in Ithaca, low-scoring game, and you know the rest, basically. RPI loses a lot to graduation, no doubt about that. But you are picking RPI / Ithaca right now. We'll talk about that more in a second. I'm picking Union to actually sneak up and bite teams this year. I know they were picked 4th by the coaches to win the Liberty League, but I just feel like, again, this is another scenario where you could have enough attrition at the top of teams beating each other, because the Hobarts of the world and the St. Lawrences of the world especially, I think, are going to have a say here. St. Lawrence is your sleeper, for instance. And Hobart's my sleeper, which is tough to say. When I say Hobart as a sleeper, it's just, that's weird to me.
But after a 5-4 season, they've got something to prove this year. So they played tough down the stretch. They lost to Ithaca and RPI by a touch. Those were very competitive games. They played way better in the second half of the season than what we saw in week 1 at Brockport, where they just got manhandled. So I have a feeling that they're coming into this year feeling that they have something to prove, and they very well could. They could, like you said, they are sort of playing the role of the sleeper or spoiler in certain respects. It's certainly a role that I think is appropriate for now.
So let's talk about Ithaca. And so we broke the news. And by the way, the studio is going to be changed behind me here a little bit. We got some things from Wesley and from Montclair and from Springfield as well. We'll be thanking folks on Twitter, et cetera, as we get a chance. It's been a busy offseason, folks. Let me just be clear about that in our personal and professional lives. So we are building up this studio here. We got the technology down pretty well, though. Forgive us for a little bit of the herky-jerky nature of James's video on this, but we kind of know what to do with that, so we'll be working on that for the next show. Ithaca. Wahid Nabi, 2-year starter, injured last year. Didn't know about his injury until later on. Basically, rib scenario, it sounded like, that didn't expose itself early on. Beats Cortland twice as a starter in Corsica as a freshman and a sophomore, and gets displaced, it looks like for now, by Joe Germinario, who came in from Brockport. Now, that in and of itself, we reported on this, was a surprising scenario to some. I'm going to tell you, without speaking specifics, I think it was to a degree premeditated that once he graduated from Brockport, which he did in June or May, whatever their cycle is there, he decided to transfer. It's not what I would call the smartest of scenarios in life, because he was going to be a Hall of Famer at Brockport, hands down. If he wanted to go onto a professional level, to me, they would have found him at Brockport. To go lateral at the end of the day to another Division III program, I'm not sure there was aspirations. Actually, I think there were aspirations. I should say it like that, to go to a higher division for him, but he didn't go to higher division. And he goes lateral to a school elsewhere in New York in Division III. Different conference, obviously, Liberty League, although Ithaca plays a fair number of Empire 8 teams. And it's just, it confounds me to a certain degree that we're doing this. We sort of led the way on the whole Luke Porman story last year. And he had 2 years of eligibility left, was not a starter at Mount Union, except for the one playoff game that we remember back when. And just, it sort of confounds you that people will try to compare the two situations. It's not the same. It is not the same. And I agree with Pat that there is a purist notion here that's missing in this whole situation in Division III. If you're looking to go to the pros in Division III, you're probably in the wrong business. Now, we all want to see folks go to the pros in Division III. Kudos to Joe Callahan, who's still alive and well in some format, it looks like, in the NFL. Although he's been signed by teams, dropped by teams along the way, but he still getting chances, it looks like, but they'll find you if you're that good. They will. In Brockport, in Ithaca, any location. I just don't agree with this move. And to displace Nabi in the situation, I can't say to Coach Swanstrom in any way, shape, or form, JB, that this was a great call. Now, it looks like from our information that we've received that he is playing with the ones, as they say, in the preseason. So he's getting the starter snaps. Let's talk about Joe, though, generally. His numbers were good last year, and the plus-minus touchdown interception ratio was better last year than the previous year, but his yards per game went down. But the RPI game just stands out to me still as a game that he just didn't look like himself. We heard about dissension in the ranks after that game, and we all know that had something to do with him wanting to get out of there. But is he durable enough to make this season a winning, above winning season? Because Ithaca was 8-3 last year, 4-1 in the conference. A team that's going to win the Liberty League on his shoulders, especially with an offensive line that's not used to his playing style. What is your take here on what he adds or doesn't add to Ithaca ultimately if he is the starter?
I think he adds a lot of versatility. I mean, we've seen him in action. He plays with his arm and his feet. He's very athletic, very strong arm, very accurate. So I think he brings that dimension, and he's a proven winner. I mean, you look at the last two seasons with Brockport, and it kind of speaks for itself. I think they're like 24-2 or something like that. So I mean, I had a chance to as part of a article talk with some folks in the Germanario camp. I talked with some folks in the Brockport camp, and it was like any kind of separation. There's two sides of the story, and I think at the end of the day, Joe and his family have just felt that that Ithaca was the right situation for him. Given that the Division I or FCS type of opportunities just didn't really come through. And so, at the end of the day, he has an opportunity. If he, there's always risk of injury in football, but if he stays healthy, he can play his second to last career game in his hometown against RPI for potentially a conference championship. And then the next week, he gets to play at Giant Stadium in front of the biggest crowd in Division III football history. So, if you go out, that's a pretty nice way to wrap it up. I mean, the only thing that I think that would beat that, Frank, would be if Luke Porman beat Mount Union for the national championship in December. But that's a whole nother story. You'll have to see.
We'll have an interview with Coach Fredenberg actually either later in the week or next week. We're going to be bringing to you. We showed a preview on Twitter, so we'll talk Mary Hart and Baylor football on another day. We'll talk Ithaca football right now and just say that this is interesting. Wahid Nabi, I've gotten to sit down with before. I find him to be a very positive, adult, charismatic guy that's got his head in the right place about what football is and isn't in his life ultimately, and it's something he loves, but also he realizes professional life will dictate eventually. He wants to go into finance, and I think he's got the stuff to make it happen ultimately. I've been impressed by the way he's handled this. From minute one, I guess I accidentally may have broken the news to him or gave him the indication of what was happening back when. I didn't intend to do that. I thought it was more widely known at that point, so I apologize to the powers that be at Ithaca, et cetera, that if that played out that way, that was not the intention. This was told to us by multiple sources at that point, and so we're not sure why it was a surprise the way it was, but it is what it is. We'll see where this goes. We want to see everybody end up in the best possible scenario. Nabi, Germanario, and Jason Hellwig. Let's go over to the next conference at this point, the Empire 8. Hellwig is going to be the starter for Brockport against Hobart, and obviously defending an 11-1 overall record, 7-0 conference record last year. Buffalo State leaves this conference this year, remember, and goes to the Liberty League, as you saw on the bottom of the screen in the last two. We both project Brockport to be the winner and Utica to be a sleeper. We'll talk about Utica more in a minute. But Jason Hellwig steps into a role that he's been looking for since transferring from Pace. And let's hear from himself right now about what to look forward to this season. Jason Hellwig, welcome to In the Huddle, and congratulations on being named starter for the Hobart game coming up this Saturday.
Thank you, and it's great to be here. Pretty proud to be on the first episode.
Hey, you know what? This is rarefied air. Only the best of the best appear on this. Tom Brady wasn't available, so we picked you instead. So
That's right.
We do want to talk about, though, what the preseason is like. There are obviously changes, a lot of graduations, a couple of things that weren't graduations that occurred along the way. And obviously, this is a role that you've wanted since you transferred in from Pace. We'll talk about that in a second. But how has it felt getting kind of matured into this role as starter, leader of the offense, whatever you want to call it? And how's it been going in the preseason?
It's been going great. We've had a lot of guys step up, whether it's on offense or defense. We lost a lot of guys on the defensive line, and we lost a bunch of guys on the offensive line. So there was a bunch of our leadership right there, and then in the defensive secondary as well. But the new guys have really stepped up, and we've really focused on bringing great effort every single day in practice this year. A lot like the 2017 season, where we went deep into the playoffs. We came focused almost every day, and we're trying to match that again this season, 2019.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about what the ride has been like. I mean, because you guys have obviously you're the highest ranked team in the East region. You advanced to the national semifinals 2 years ago, and I mean, it just seems like there's been this upward trajectory. Brand new locker rooms. I saw the social media. You're like Oregon now. You got like the black uniforms, you got the yellow, you got the green, you got the white. I mean, you guys are all decked out. I imagine there's a lot of energy and excitement. I mean, you can't necessarily rest on the past, but there's a lot of good momentum, I think, that you guys have. Isn't that right?
Yeah, for sure. And it's definitely a lot different around campus. Now when I first came here, everyone wasn't as high on the football team as they are now. But I remember one of the first things Coach Mangoni was saying to me when he was recruiting me was, we're going to turn this place into a national power at the D3 level. And he laid it out, and then it kind of all fell into fruition here. And now everyone's here on board. The whole campus is on board. The alumni are on board, everything like that.
Well, one thing you're talking about the recruitment. Let's talk about your road to Brockport overall. Pace was the original school, so you went downstate. You were nearby from Medina. Which is it, guys? You know better than I do. I think both of you.
Medina, New York, and Medina, Ohio.
New York. Okay. So I'm right in both counts or wrong in both counts. Depends on how you're looking at it.
Tomato, Frank. That's the way it goes.
We won't call the whole thing off. Don't worry. Yeah. So, what led you? For folks that don't know, you are, I believe, a pitcher for Brockport's baseball team. So baseball is a passion for you as well. Was Pace a baseball move, football move, both? Kind of lead us through your early career and what got you over to Brockport.
Pace was definitely a football move. Coming out of high school, I had, I think, 3 Division II schools that offered me scholarship money for football. And Pace had put together the best package for that. So I ended up going on full tuition. So that I was pretty excited. And as a little kid, I always wanted to go somewhere and say, oh, I went to play football for college, and they paid for my schooling. So that was one of the main reasons I went there. And then in high school, Coach Mangoni had recruited me hard. And when I left Pace, he was one of the first people to reach out to me and contacted me. And then that's kind of how I ended up at Brockport. And then once I was here, the baseball coach asked, hey, you want to pitch on the baseball team for us? And I said, sure, why not? So I kind of ended up on the baseball team as well. But definitely, I think most people around here know that football has been like my main passion, and baseball kind of just like playing the game.
Another one of those #YD3 moments, Frank. You can double down in athletics at the Division III level, not quite like you can elsewhere. So Jason, obviously, like you said, some new faces, coming into the program either through recruiting or elsewhere. I mean, with about a week until your first game, I imagine you guys have probably done some inter squad scrimmaging. Is there any scrimmages scheduled against some other teams either in your area, or is it just basically you guys are going into week 1 mode right after the Labor Day holiday?
Yeah, we're definitely going into week 1 mode right after the Labor Day holiday. We started we just started working our scout stuff yesterday for our first game. Before that, we had been all, inter-squad, team against team, trying to really solidify spots for guys. And now we're headed into full-fledged Hobart mode, and it's Hobart week here already. So that's how we're going about it.
It's got a nice ring to it.
Yeah. Beat them damn Statesmen. I mean, good luck to all the players that day. Sorry, JB. So, Jason, what is the view this year? I mean, you've had 2 undefeated regular seasons. You had teams like Cortland last year that were kind of right on the doorstep of possibly knocking off that pedestal. They are salivating at the chance again this season, acting like nothing has really changed. Brockport's still the king of the hill. Is a 10-0 season how we're going to measure success? Is it something else? What, to you, especially right now, is a successful 2019 campaign?
I think our first goal, first and foremost, is to win the Empire 8. And secondly, we want to make a deep run in the playoffs. I think last year we fell into a bit of complacency as a team around the board, and that's kind of what led to some of those games being closer. We didn't play up to our potential a few times last year. Luckily, we managed to come away with an undefeated regular season and then get into the playoffs and win one game before bowing out. But I think our ultimate goal is always win the Empire 8 and then make a deep run in the playoffs.
Well, there's a lot of pressure on your shoulders, obviously, and losing Caleb Fidelis on the offensive line doesn't make your life any easier. But what kind of style should we expect from you compared to maybe quarterbacks of Brockport past that might differentiate you a little bit? What should people expect from a Jason Hellwig pocket scenario compared to what we've seen?
Yeah, I mean, I really view myself as a distributor of the ball to guys who are great athletes. So the quicker I can get the ball out of my hands to guys that run 4.4s, the better, the more success we're going to have. I mean, I consider myself to be pretty athletic, but I can't match what we got on the outside and in the backfield. So we're better off with the ball in their hands, and they got great moves, and they're very talented athletes. So that's how we're looking to get it done.
JB, I think you ran a 4.4 in a 10-meter dash recently, right?
Something like that, yeah. I think I was 4.4 about a year and a half ago. But Jason, and one of the quarterback's best friends is a strong running game. And I know that Justin Morrison was lost to the season last year with a knee injury, and that was definitely a tough loss because of his talent. Another Division II, upper division transfer into the school who's had a lot of success for the Golden Eagles over his career. Is he doing well? Is he back? I imagine you're going to probably be trying to hand the ball off to him when you're not looking for those 4.4 receivers like Ortiz or others out there.
Yeah, and the first time I saw Justin working out after coming back from his surgery on his knee, I couldn't believe it. I mean, the guy was in there deadlifting about 500 pounds. And then we get here the first day of camp and we're running 5-10-5s and L drills, and he's got the top numbers on the team. So he's right back where he left off, and he's looked very good in practice along with our other running backs, Jale and Samborski. So I think we're going to have 3 guys who are pretty all experienced and talented running backs back there.
As far as the defense goes, I mean, obviously you guys have lost a lot to graduation there. I know Coach Fox has done an excellent job, building that unit up. And for you, imagine you've practiced against, All-Americans now for 2-3 years in a row on a regular basis. So maybe your toughest games are the ones that you actually have in practice. But tell us a little bit about some of these other guys on the defense who are stepping into some new roles. I mean, we know about Alex West, making some preseason All-American teams and things like that. But are there other Brockport defensive players that may not be as well known now, but you think will be kind of more of a household name for D3 fans in a couple of weeks?
Yeah, I think one of the other obvious ones, Jenkins. He played a lot last year. I don't know if he got quite the recognition that West got, but he's also very talented off the edge, playing outside linebacker. And then another kid to look out for is Ben Marshall. He stepped in when Jake O'Connell got hurt last year, and he plays safety for us. And then we're rocking a bunch of new corners this year, all guys with a lot of talent. We got Josh Donaldson, transferred from Alvernia. Raylan from Nyack High School. He played quarterback down there. He's extremely fast. And then Bryce Sudzik from Springville High School. He's also pretty good at corner, and he's a veteran guy. So this is his 4th year on the team, and he was one of those guys who was getting a lot of 2 reps, a lot of scout reps the past couple of years, but I think he's ready to step in and make some plays for us.
Now, we're going to show it on the screen. I don't have it handy for you, but I think you know what I'm arriving at already before I even say it. But I believe the young lady's name was Candace Kowalik, who taught you some gymnastics recently. I think this was debuted in May 14th, my sister's birthday of 2018.
Nice.
The photo that we're showing is you in a very svelte leotard of some sort for gymnastics. You did a web series for Brockport, for those that don't know. We dared you to wear that leotard for today's interview, perhaps under the long sleeve shirt there. It's somewhere hiding, I don't know. But you know, you're no stranger to the camera. You are very self-deprecating. With that former quarterback, you did some funny stuff on some of the Brockport social media, video stuff, whatnot. You know, you have a good sense of humor. Is that one of the things you add? And tell us about how you ended up in that leotard, for Christ's sake.
So they decided they needed someone who could go on camera and play a bunch of different sports and challenge athletes and interview them in their own sport. So I went through softball, men's soccer, volleyball, women's basketball, gymnastics, everything like that, football. So we did all that stuff, and it's a little bit to get our brand out there for all the sports. This is Brockport Athletics. We want people to know more about the athlete and have a good time watching the videos. So that was something that they decided people would like. And then I always ended up in a uniform, whether it was a basketball uniform or soccer or something like that. So when it came time for me to put the leotard on, it just so happened to be that I had to do it. I wasn't scared. And last year they actually ended up winning the national championship, the gymnastics team here in Brockport. So
Did you take credit?
Me putting the leotard on, and that girl won the all-around national championship for individuals.
Oh, she was very good. She looked good in the leotard, and she was very good both. Okay, you on the other hand.
Well, I don't know, Frank. I mean, I know Jason's a sports management major, but maybe a career in Hollywood could be in the offering area. He seems like a pretty, he's got the comedian thing down. He's not afraid to get dressed up and do some acting. So hey, you never know.
If they're looking for someone who's willing to do anything on the camera, then that maybe I'll have a role there. So if it calls, then
yeah, well, if it calls, we're all in trouble. If that's what they're looking for. I've got 2 things for you before we end this. First, let's ask you to. I'm going to do this order. I've been flipping it back and forth in my head here, but there are a lot of people that don't know you. That love Brockport and just don't get to the school or aren't as close to the team out there. They see a little bit of upheaval in the quarterback ranks. Obviously, we're not going to get into that per se, but we can't ignore the fact that things have happened. But here's your 30-second, what do they call it, sales pitch, I guess, to folks to kind of introduce yourself and give them the confidence that you are the man for this job at the end of the day. Jason Hellwig, tell folks about yourself and why Brockport is a success under you this season.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing foremost is I have a very close relationship with all the receivers. And guys who want to fight for you are guys who are going to make plays for you. So I think that's very important for this team. And I think that the same thing with the offensive line. Guys who want to protect you are going to protect you better than people who don't care for you as a person. So I think that's one thing that'll help us. And we're looking to get out there and make some plays. And I've been waiting for this moment for my 4 years here at Brockport. So take advantage of it.
6'4". He's no short guy in the pocket, and he's going to see down that field for sure, folks. So he's got a very good chance to continue the winning traditions here for Brockport. The other thing is, as one of our first player guests of the season, obviously, for In the Huddle, you get shout-outs. And I know there's a bunch of Hellwigs out there somewhere on the Twitterverse that we run into accidentally or on purpose along the way. So we may hear some of those names right now, but the floor is yours, Jason Hellwig, to any teammates, friends, family, coaches, Steve Potter, anybody you want to name here, feel free for shout-outs.
I'm going to shout out Coach Mangoni and Steve Potter. And then I'm going to shout out Susan Hoffman, who works in the athletic department at Brockport, making everything go. And then I'm going to shout out my parents, Eric and Sandy, my brother Adam, and my adopted brother Jalen Cooper, who plays for Toledo. And they got a big game against Kentucky coming up. And then I'm going to shout out my receivers, all of them, Hub, Benson, JoJo, Ematep coming in from JUCO, and Derek Chance. And then definitely shout out my old line, too. Those guys protecting me, need them big, and gotta love the defense too. That keeps the points per game down. So
makes life a lot easier on you.
Right.
As a baseball player, you've appreciated the good defensive life as well.
Sure.
All
right.
Hey,
well, wait, Frank. Before wait. You got this is important. This is important because viewers need to know this. Now, Jason, the Brockport O-line, are they pizza guys? Are they wing guys? I mean, you're in upstate New York. You're not that far from Buffalo, the Buffalo wing capital of the United States. Like, if you're going to take your guys out for, dinner or lunch or something, what are they chowing down? And can you hang with them, or do they just out eat you?
That's actually one thing that I'm pretty good at is eating. So even for my senior year, I went with the unlimited meal plan at the dining hall, and the guys on the offensive line, they got a soft spot for Taco Bell for the $5 box. So that is usually, if I'm taking them, that's the go-to, Taco Bell. They love that stuff.
Well, Nami had to pay up pretty high compared to you. If it's $5 box, you've got to pay
right.
No
kidding. This guy's smart. Maybe he's a business management guy.
Fat Jack's is a little more expensive than that, although I think it's gone now down in the Ithaca area, so don't worry about that.
Yeah, they got the cost of living down there is a little bit higher than up here in Brockport. So.
Yeah.
Jason, my last question for you. There was a little bit of dissension toward me on Twitter, et cetera, last year toward the end of the regular season for things I may or may not have said online, et cetera. Am I allowed back in the Brockport area, or will I be escorted by authorities if I try to get toward campus?
You're allowed back. You're allowed back to the Brockport area as long as you're cheering for us. So that's the most important thing.
I can't cheer. You know that.
So,
well,
the
only way I'm going back to Brockport is if I bring a lot of sunscreen, because, man, I got fried at that game last year in week 1, man. Whew, I just brought the Florida weather up with me. I don't know what happened.
We've been blessed with some good weather here recently, so hopefully that continues again this year.
Okay, so we'll discuss my allowance back into the Brockport area offline a little bit more, but we want to thank you for joining us. We knew this would be a good one because we have seen your personality come out in a lot of different ways throughout the last few years. And if I do say it here, folks, might not believe me or might not want to take me seriously, but I've always thought that you've had the ability to do this job. You had somebody in front of you that was extremely good, but you're the man for this job in a lot of different ways, as you said a little bit ago. So good luck to you, and we'll see how the season goes, and stay in touch.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. We're looking to keep things rolling.
Okay, JB, had a lot of fun with Hellwig there, and he seems to be somebody that's humble, but at the same time can be a larger-than-life character. Yeah, confident in that respect,
yes.
Yep. But when it comes to football, what's your concerns and what's your expectations right now for him?
Well, so this won't be the first time that he started a game, because he did sub in for Joe back in 2007 when they had to play St. Lawrence. And, they won the game. It was a 28-7 final. So I think we're probably not going to see Brockport, putting up 50, 60 points, although he does definitely have a, talented set of receivers and strong, running back core to lean on. I think, I like the way he put it. He sort of, he's just there to, kind of distribute the ball to guys who can make plays. And so I think you'll see, I don't think he's going to be like a game manager type of quarterback, but I think he's going to be, maybe one of those sort of West Coast offense types that just, gets the ball out quickly. He makes quick decisions, and probably leans on his running game. And they may have to score a few more points here and there because their defense has turned over a decent amount. But I'm sure a lot of those guys backing up all those All-Americans and all regional players are pretty good ones too. So Brockport's had a good run, and I'm sure the recruiting and everything has paid off for them because of that too.
Feels like we made Utica our sleeper a couple times in the last couple of years, and why not do it again, right?
They gave Brockport a good run for their money at the end of last season, and with the young quarterback and there's a Peyton Miller. Is that what we had on last? Yep. Yeah. So the Utica dudes, the Utica guys, they just have this they have this confidence and swagger. Coach has built a solid program there. And 7-4 last season, they kind of, you could say, upset Ithaca in a crazy shootout game in the ECAC Bowl, and so they've got a lot of momentum, a lot of guys coming back, and so I think that they can definitely make some waves.
So the Empire, it's going to be an interesting one. We put a poll up for you folks, and we only had 4 choices we could give you on Twitter, but maybe it's fitting. And 54% as of our recording, we'll put up the updated results right now, so maybe slightly different, but it looked like a majority. They picked Brockport to win the conference. And, we gave Alfred and Cortland as the viable second choices on it, and they both only polled around 10 to 15%. And then the field basically got the remainder, the remaining 4 teams in the conference. So it's still Brockport's conference to lose, according to the fans out there. Almost 100 votes, I think it was, give or take.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good sample size to say that a lot of Brockport momentum out there is still, and we'll see who can knock him off. And I know Coach Mangoni probably hates that fact because, there's no secret anymore. I think it's a lot easier to play from behind in terms of the notice column than it is to have to sit up there and basically keep defending yourself. We saw a lot of that in 2018 for sure for them. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah.
NJAC time. We lose Frostburg State. We lose Southern Virginia. Frostburg State had won that conference like Husson did the CFC last year, and then we'll no longer be defending that. So Montclair, Salisbury, Christopher Newport, Wesley, Rowan seem to be the teams to look at here. We'll talk more about that Christopher Newport game against North Central that's coming up this weekend, and whether or not that gets played is a question. But you pick Wesley / Montclair. I pick Montclair. They're playing the Wesley-Montclair game at Montclair again this year. That was a game that I attended 2 years ago that went down to the fourth quarter before it got put away. It looks to me like Montclair has really built themselves up even since that point. Wesley's kind of still trying to figure themselves out, especially after Coach Strass's death, last May, almost a year and a half ago now, but it seems like yesterday. That's amazing. It's been that long. But, your thought is that they'll probably tie is what the slash means here, and
I think it's going to be I think it's going to be a situation where you're going to see, someone's going to beat Wesley, someone's going to beat Montclair, but there might not be one or the other. Christopher Newport is coming back with a very strong team, and so is Salisbury. So there's a lot of potential for carnage in the top 4 or 5 teams here, especially with all the talent that Wesley is bringing back to the fore defensively. Sounds like the quarterback situation that they have there is starting to look pretty good for them. I know Burroughs struggled a little bit with turnovers last season, and I think that hurt them a few times. They didn't really have a kicking game. They seem to have addressed that. When I talked to Coach Knapp in the offseason, he seemed really confident of their chances, and he was even to the point where I think I was trying to sell him on, what do you think of Jaquil Birch's potential offensive player of the year, and he was like, he didn't do that well against us. So, I was like, okay, this guy is like, he's locked in, and he thinks, and he really, feels that they are, even though they struggled last year, just record wise, I mean, you lose 4 games by a combined, 5 points. It could have very easily been a 10-0 season. But he's feeling it. And I think the Wolverines feel like they have something to prove, and will probably be a tough out.
Weren't even in the top 25 in the D3Football.com poll, I believe, which is which is probably a definite wake-up call to his team, that they're not getting the respect they feel they deserve, despite what happened last year, that, everybody has an off year and they still have clout and still have the athletes and whatnot, yet they didn't make it into there. They were on my ballot, but, one ballot does not make a poll at the end of the day. Oh, you're losing your earpiece, sir, JB?
Yeah. I think that was Coach Knapp smacking me upside the head from all the way down in Delaware, saying, like, shut up, Baker.
Sleeper, Salisbury and Rowan, for you and me, respectively. Two teams that will have a role, I think, in this conference race. Rowan definitely put themselves forward in that Wesley game last year to really, I think, slam the door on them at that point. Salisbury, a team as well that just keeps hanging around, and we'll see what happens there. I got to see them last year. Got to keep their quarterbacks healthy. That, again, in that triple option scheme, that can really determine it. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's go to the MAC in our final interview coming up here. This is what I would call a conference that has to define itself this year. This is a conference that had some trouble last year. We heard that the Misericordia scrimmage didn't go tremendously for Misericordia this year, so the second place team is going to have to bounce back here and prove themselves as really the real deal. I think a lot of people saw a lot of those close games, those cardiac finishes last year, and don't give them the credit yet, and I might be one of them. I don't know if I really give them the credit as being that team, the heir apparent right now of the MAC. Delaware Valley loses players at graduation, obviously, a lot. But they pack them back in, it seems like, every year. Del Val's always up there. Yeah. And because there's a lot of confusion near the top, the FDU Florums of the world, Misericordias of the world are up there, Kings, Wolves. These are not teams that you're used to seeing. You're used to seeing Widener and Albright at the top with Del Val. That didn't happen last year. Albright goes back to Mary Hardin Baylor in week 2. It should be an interesting thing to see if they can bounce back from 91 to 7. We'll talk to Coach Fredenberg about that. Again, later in the week, we'll show that. But Widener, a team with a lot of dissension coming into this season. They're your sleeper. After talking to James Gillespie, it should be my sleeper too, I would say. But we wrote this up beforehand, and we'll stick with who we had. I have Lycoming based on some of their freshman and sophomore leadership last year. I think they can actually keep climbing the mountain here. But Widener, as your sleeper. Let's talk to James Gillespie first, and then we'll talk about a little bit more why. JB, here is James Gillespie, wide receiver, senior from Widener. And James, why don't start I'd rather look at the past right off the bat and then go to the future, because that's where we should be looking and putting our concentration. Right. So I kind of want to ask you about last season. We talked to your current coach about talking about this, and he said, we got nothing to hide here. So last year was not exactly what I would call rainbows and, lollipops at Widener because of some, it looked like dissension inside the program. You start 0-3, the whole blame Google situation comes out from Coach Kelly and whatnot. And we were getting some stuff on our social media that would suggest that things weren't a happy place at Widener. You still pull out what I believe was a 4-6 record overall. But take us through last season and then compare it to how this season is feeling right now under a new coaching staff at Widener.
Well, I think it all just starts with, team camaraderie. Last season, we didn't have the best team camaraderie, just offensive side of the ball, defensive side of the ball, and that was it, And then, of course, there were some internal controls, situation. We had problems with that, with starting from, I felt like it was the top down. So, our record showed of how we did last season, 4-6. It wasn't what we were expecting. We were expecting to come in, play for a MAC championship, which we do every year. That's what we always expect. But we just didn't get the job done last year. And it's not. We can't blame the coaches. We can't blame the players. Just as a collective group, we didn't come together and we didn't get the job done. So that's about it.
How does it feel this year comparative?
This year is completely different, whole new coaching staff. And during spring ball, when we, found out Coach B was the head coach and he started bringing in staff, it kind of gave us, a purpose to rally around each other and rally around these new coaches. And it just brought us all together. It was no more offense, defensive side of the ball. We were all one team. We're all one collective unit. So that was the big kicker for me. That's what I noticed right away. Just the excitement. Everyone was, really excited to get back to the season because of how disappointing last season was. We didn't, especially as seniors, we didn't want to, leave our mark as, the Widener team to go 4-6 and 6-4 the past couple of seasons. Because even for us, that we didn't think that was the best we could do. We want to be, 10-0. We want to be top tier. We want to be, recommended for, the NCAA playoffs every year. We want to be top 25. So, that's team camaraderie. Yeah.
So you mentioned, I think you guys call him Coach B. He was kind of an internal hire in that he'd been your offensive coordinator for a couple of seasons, so there was some familiarity there. But he did come to you guys from the University of Mary Hardin-Baylor, which has some experience winning some championship rings, which you mentioned. And so tell us a little bit about what it's like to have a head coach who's been to the pinnacle and what that sort of brings to the table as you guys get ready for your new season.
Well, me and Coach B have always been, close since he came in. Me and him went to the same high school. He told me about his days at Del Valle too. Just being a relatable D3 player really, touched home to us. And then, like you said about the Mary Hardin-Baylor, how they came from a winning program, that's everything. I mean, he brought to the table at Widener, everything he knew, everything he learned there. And it's really helped us in a way because, we kind of have that to leverage, Coach B's been there, so he knows what he's doing. He's going to handle this the right way. He's going to tighten up our ship.
Last season for you, after starting, I think, 11 games in 2017, you only started in 4 games, but still were the number 3 receiver on the charts for Widener. Take us through your 2018 season. Were there injuries happening? What was going on for you, and what should we expect from you in 2019?
Well, I had a pretty good 2017 season as a sophomore. I wasn't really expecting it, but I got a lot of confidence out of that year. And last year coming in, I wanted to be the best. Fortunately, I got hurt in the 4th game against Albright. I broke my collarbone, surgery and everything, put me out for the season. And it kind of I looked at football in a whole new perspective. You got to play every play like it's your last. Because I didn't even know if I was going to be able to return this season with the injury. But luckily, I got good trainers. I got a good surgeon. I did the rehab, and now I'm healthy. I think you'll expect a lot from me, or I expect myself to do a lot this year. I'm just really excited for the season. Back in spring ball, the first time I caught a pass, I missed it, and camp this year, first time I put the pads back on, I was a little antsy at first, just wanted to get back out there. We just had our scrimmage against Salisbury yesterday. That was the first time I was really able to strap them up and hit other people, another color. And I just, I was really excited, and I think you'll expect a lot from me this season.
Well, one of the most exciting week 1 games, if not all the games that I saw last year, was when you guys played Rowan, which has been a long time interconference rival for Widener over the seasons. I mean, the nice thing about the MAC is you guys got a full slate of teams to play, and you're in conference. But you and the Pros have had some pretty memorable matchups over the years. Tell us a little bit as we start to pivot towards that game coming up on Saturday night. What we can expect, if is it going to be another 39-38 barn burner or whatever it was, or is it going to be maybe a little bit of a different type of game this season?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been here for 4 years now. I've played them 3 times, and I haven't beat them yet. So it's become more of a personal thing for me. I need to get a win from these guys. But, yeah, I mean, I think it will be a great game, like it always is. Rowan always gives us their best matchup, their best game, and I think we do the same. So I think it will turn out to be a great one.
You've been around for long enough. The MAC has gone through some interesting changes over the last few years. And last year, a lot of people said the conference was down as a whole. And a team like Misericordia was rising toward the top, was some sort of evidence of that for a lot of people. And Albright having the season they had, and Widener even having the season they had, was proof further for that idea. What do you think really is going on in the MAC? Is it down, or is it just something where the teams are transitioning, but it's still an elite conference in the East and in the country at this point? Give us your kind of 30,000 foot view, since you actually play in the darn conference.
Yeah, I definitely think it's still an elite conference. I've been seeing these teams basically flip throughout the years. Albright was on top when I was a freshman and sophomore, and we see how their season went last year. And then Misericordia was always on the bottom of the totem pole when I was a freshman, when I was a sophomore, and they ended up beating us last year. So then you see teams like FDU out of the woodwork. It just seems like teams are rising and falling, and you can't really get a great look at the conference, especially during the preseason, because you never really know what's going to happen. You never know if there's new freshmen coming in that are going to make an impact. So, I mean, it's really hard to evaluate, but that's just what I've noticed since playing in it.
So, James, it's your senior season. I think you told us you're from a little north of Philadelphia. Just tell us kind of your story, how you ended up at Widener, and what you're looking to do after football is over.
Well, the recruiting process out of high school was a little difficult for me. I came from a pretty predominant program in the PCL at Archbishop Wood. And like I said, recruiting was tough. Widener came out after me, and I decided I was going to Widener on April 30th, when the final date you could pick was May 1st. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do. But I had a couple overnights here. I had a couple visits, and I realized Widener was a place for me. It just felt like a very family-oriented place. I came to the Lebanon Valley game in their 2015 season, and it was the first night game in a while. And I felt at home. Seniors, juniors, it didn't matter what year you were in. They took me under their wing. They treated me like I was there for 4 years before that. But it's a really family-oriented place. I love it here, and I'm so happy with the decision I made.
Glad you're mentioning family, because this is the point in the interview when we allow you to say hello to them, among others. And I'm glad you're smiling, because I was just about to say to you that you are very business-like about this, and which you should be. That's great. Coach would love that fact about you. But we try to bring out a little bit of the softer side of the players once in a while, if that's possible. And your aunts and your uncles, your parents, your whole family is probably watching this. So make sure when you're doing the following segment here to smile as you give shout outs to your family, friends, teammates, whoever may be watching this. James Gillespie, the floor is yours for shout outs.
Well, I just want to shout out, first and foremost, my parents. I'm so thankful for everything they've done for me. And my brother and sister, growing up, they made life so much easier. My brother's a year removed from me, so me and him were always so competitive. And now he's at Villanova playing basketball. My sister was a Division I athlete at Delaware. She just had a baby in July, and we're all really excited about that.
Also, James,
all my friends, teammates, aunts, uncles, all the family.
JB, one of the things that I love about this show is I didn't know much about James Gillespie coming into today's interview, and didn't know how this interview would go, for that matter, because obviously we were kind of shooting blindly when we get folks we've never spoken with before. This was an awesome interview. Yep. You are an awesome guy. Football, obviously, you love the game, and you're a great human being. You can tell, and that's why Coach B wanted you to be our interview, I guess, from the start. He knew this about you. So I really appreciate your time, as does JB, and good luck this season.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not the same without Widener toward the top. In 2000, when I used to broadcast for Union College, I remember doing the playoff game between Widener and Union, and they shocked us because we didn't really know that much about Widener back then, and Union erased a 26-point deficit, but still lost the game in that game. It was an amazing game, and Widener went far that year. There's no reason why this year's Widener team can't do the same thing, and guys like you will make sure of that, I am sure. So thank you for your time, and good luck this season.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay, JB, so you really do look like a smart man to me right now with the Widener pick. Coach B is definitely building something there. It was a little surprise they hired internally after the mess that occurred with Coach Kelly there. But at the same time, you can see that not all assistant coaches necessarily buy into everything that the head coaches do or talk about. And in this case, with the lineage that he has, Coach B there, that he's a good pick and motivational, and James Gillespie gives us a lot of that information there. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I talk about my predictions not being right. Well, I had them as the winner of the MAC in the 2018 kickoff preview, and after a 4-6 finish, I mean, there was a combination of issues, including injuries that tripped them up. But there was other stuff going on that we had talked about last season. But at the end of the day, it sounds like the Pride is back on track. They're focusing on their tradition of always being kind of in the hunt for a national championship, and it will start off with them trying to raise their game this season.
So again, we'll see what happens with that. We have Del Val, both of us at the top, though. You have Stevenson with them. We'll see how that pans out. Stevenson has been kind of a headstrong team in that conference, no doubt, but has not been able to put together, let's say, enough wins to be the team to take down Del Val at the top of the perch there, or anyone else when it's come down to the last few years. I think Del Val's been the winner actually all the last 3 years, if I had to think back right now. So anyway, let's go NESCAC real quick. We're only doing this to tell you who our projected winner and sleeper is for each of us, because no games are played in week 1 by them, but they do have a 9-game schedule coming up, as you know. Trinity, both of us, until somebody proves otherwise. And then Middlebury for James, Williams for me. We'll talk more about that next week, but there it is to be comprehensive. JB,
Yep.
We have a hurricane coming up the coast, and that should be last we knew. We're recording this Sunday. It looks like it's going to have some influence on Florida, but not necessarily a catastrophic one as of the recording of this. That could change. It could hit the Carolina coast pretty hard. And so let's look at these games and talk about what we expect in each one of them, or not each one of them. We'll pick out a few at least to talk about. But the first game right away is one that I think could have some issues because of this storm. Johns Hopkins at Randolph-Macon on Thursday evening. Not sure what to make of how the storm will play out, but Hopkins coming to play their first game since Coach Margraff's passing, and that's going to be emotional for sure. But against a team like Randolph-Macon that's kind of on the upswing here right now, this is a trap game in a lot of ways. They could lose this game. I mean, this is not a gimme game by any stretch of the imagination on the road. What are you thinking?
Well, I mean, I think, we spoke with, their quarterback, David Tamaro, in the offseason. I know that they feel great about, last year's results, other than, obviously what happened with Coach Margraff right after the new year. But this team, was touchdown away from going to the national championship. So they feel like, their window is still open. And so it's one of the very few, I think it might be the only game in week 1 that has 2 teams in the top 25 playing each other. So, they're going to take this one serious, and it'll be a business trip, I'm sure. And should be a great way to kick off the season.
But as a reminder, a couple of weeks ago, Florida versus Miami, that these Week 1 super games can be mistake fests because the teams just aren't there yet. And so these are always risky games. Number 6 ranking doesn't really matter to me in week one as much as it should in the rest of the season, because you just don't know what you're going to get. But like you said, the experience Tamaro and company, I should say, is something that I think puts them over the top. But if this game is even played that night or some other time, that's going to be a big asterisk right now. Another game that's going to be in, let's say, harm's way, Alvernia versus Gallaudet. We heard back on Twitter on Sunday night that Gallaudet's monitoring the situation. It looks okay for now, but obviously things change. Conditions can change. One more game we'll talk about in a second on our next slate. But first, let's finish out here. The Friday night games, the one I'm looking most forward to, although I'm going to go to Del Valle at Kane, I believe, at this point, Framingham State at Endicott. I think that game is a tremendous game that's going to tell us a lot about two teams that we have both either picked or are looking at, consider picking at the top of their conferences, the MASCAC and the CCC. Endicott, to me, if they can handle a team like Framingham State, that bodes very well for them. I think Framingham State comes in as probably a little bit of the favorite here, but with, let's say, a 7-point type of scenario, within one possession type favorite. This is a good game, and I'm going to be watching that out of the corner of my eye, on the phone or whatever I can use to watch it that night. Any games that you want to pick out here? Worcester State WPI's back in play this year. Yeah,
that's the first time that game's been played in a couple of seasons. Coach Rob and company are excited about that. Get that rivalry renewed. Fortunately for the Engineers, a certain All-American tight end, Jacob Mayer, is no longer on the Lancers. He actually plays for Framingham State now. So he transferred his senior season to play for the Mariners. And he's a guy who's getting looks from NFL scouts and so on. So we'll see if he can really make a big difference in the Rams offense. The biggest question mark I have with Endicott is the loss of Michael Rivera, their star middle linebacker. How will that impact? They're bringing back a ton on offense and they're going to be able to put up points, but it's the defensive side of the ball that makes me a little concerned for the Gulls, and time will tell if they can hang in there or not.
Sounds good. Let's go to the Saturday games at this point. And North Central at Christopher Newport. Now, we were talking to Pat Coleman earlier on Sunday, and he pointed out that if Christopher Newport cancels classes on Friday for any reason because of this hurricane, that Saturday may not allow them to, or they may not allow hosting of an event on Saturday there. That would be a huge loss of a really high-profile out-of-conference / out-of-region game in this situation.
Yeah, that would definitely, and I guess there's always the slight possibility that the captains could, hop a flight to Chicago and play that game up there, possibly, depending on the hurricane situation. But they just spent a ton of money going up to Canada off season. They had an opportunity to do a team trip up there. And they played, as a Canadian college team. And so I don't know if the budget will support that kind of a move, if that's the case. But it would be, like you said, it would be a shame if they had to cancel that one because that's a great matchup.
Yeah, it's not an easy thing to reschedule it either because I'm sure there's either a flight involved here or some kind of long-distance bus trip, obviously. So cross your fingers that it gets played and that this storm actually does go out to sea further and doesn't affect Virginia at all, or the Carolinas, or anybody.
That would be the best case for sure.
TC&J at Muhlenberg is a game I'm going to try to attend at least part of on Saturday. I have to start in Philly for flag football reasons, referee clinic, and then move up Pennsylvania at that point. Brockport at Hobart, a game that we attended last year on our Game Day Live segment. We'll try to do one of those again later on this season. FDU, Florham, Merchant Marine, Carnegie Mellon, MIT. There's a brain bowl right there. Wesley at Franklin Pierce, D2. So that's going to be interesting to see what Wesley's able to do against some upper-level talent. Springfield, Western New England, pinch and saw game moves back to Saturday. I wish it was staying on Friday, to be honest with you. I thought it was a great venue
the lights
scenario.
Would make it more fun, yeah.
Although Western New England, maybe with the night games, can't do as well with it. That might be what's happening there. Rowan at Widener, a game I'd love to attend, but I will be also attending later that night.
Crazy game.
Oh, yeah, last year we talked about it with James Gillespie. St. Lawrence at Utica at 7 o'clock on Saturday. That should be a really good game, I think. That was a crazy game last year, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. And hoping to see what Coach Raggiano and company have up their sleeves there. Coach Puck is going to be bringing his team to town, it looks like. And I don't know who to pick in that one, although Utica is our sleeper. St. Lawrence was your sleeper for the Liberty League.
Yeah, I think with the maturation of their Canadian quarterback Groucho and sort of that 70 pass attempts a game, they have this new air it out offense. It's going to be tough for the Pioneers to cover all these receivers, and so unless they can bring a ton of pressure up the middle and try to take some of that away from the Saints, it could be I think last year it ended up being like a field goal game, like 9-6. It was really low scoring. But I have a feeling this year it's going to be a little different. I think St. Lawrence has they know this new offense that Coach Puck and team has put into place, and I think they're going to really air it out, and it should be an entertaining game.
So there you have it, folks. We've covered all 9 conferences, although we'll cover the NESCAC a little bit more next week. We'll cover some more national stuff next week as well. The way it works is we'll have a host chat segment out next week, usually a player interview and a coach interview at some point. And sometimes we'll do a projection show. We're not going to do plays of the week yet. We're going to save that for either week 2 or week 3. We're going to start those up. It's a lot of heavy lifting going on in this first week, folks. And so give us a little bit of a break on that one, because that's going to take a lot of work to go get those plays of the week. But we'll include in our host chat show basically a recap of all the games, touch them all basically, and we call it crunch time. And you'll see that here coming up. And don't forget, we're also allowing for audio podcasts or audio listeners to take this podcast now, and that may not be immediately effective on the Tuesday that this is released, but by Wednesday we hope to have that up on our Podbean site, which connects to iTunes. So a lot of excitement going on here, a lot of different ways to view and listen to us. God help you if you want to do that every day or every week, but we make it available to you. JB, final thoughts for week 1 before we head into it?
Well, I think like we've said before, this is going to be an interesting season. First off, it's starting later than usual. There's going to be a handful of almost like playoff type of inter-regional games in the first couple weeks of the season, to see some teams coming into the East that you normally would have to wait until the first round of the NCAA playoffs to see. So I think it's going to be a really great season, a lot of fun, a lot of different stuff. We think we know what we're talking about with all these, all this stuff. You won't be able to see this on the podcast or the Podbean, sorry, but that's part of the fun though. We're going to give it our best shot, and we'll be along the ride all the way to Texas in December. So it should be a great year.
My family and friends all the time, and anybody that tries to have a personal life with me, 16 weeks is what this is going to last for you and me both. And it is a marathon, but we enjoy a lot of it. That James Gillespie interview, I think I said it at the end of that there's a lot of reasons we love this show, but getting to meet some of these student athletes and talking about the football, but also life with them, and it's still a pleasure. And as long as we're enjoying it, we're going to continue doing it for you folks. And please, the whole thing, the give and take on this thing is push us out on your social media. We can't survive without you sharing us at the end of the day. Also, watch Twitter this weekend, because when I attend a game, we send you video clips via Twitter that you won't see anywhere else. We try to give you that insight into the game from the sideline view that I'm able to give you, and then also bring some interviews during the next week's show. Well, plenty of interviews, it looks like, coming up, if I have any way of doing it.
Plenty of interviews, yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, JB, looks like we're past our bedtime anyway, so let's say goodnight or good day to these folks that might be watching a little bit earlier, and we'll see you throughout the weekend. It's week 1 of 2019, our season 12, but college football's 150th season this year.